Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bibliophila, where I discuss books that inspire us, enrich our minds and broaden our mental horizon. Let's begin today's episode with a review of yet another book. Today, I'll be talking about a book, My Boyhood Days by Rabindranath Tagore. This book is the English translation of the original one, Chele Bela by Rabindranath Tagore. In the book, My Boyhood Days, Rabindranath Tagore depicts his own seemingly commonplace childhood days in the Jorasanko Thakurbari. He presents a vivid picture of the contemporary Calcutta and its culture. Rabindranath Tagore was born into a Bengali aristocratic family. In this book, he inspects the details of the everyday realities around him when he was a child. Through his eyes, we get a clear picture of the late 19th century Calcutta, and it is easy for us to get a glimpse of the changes that occurred during the span of a century. The late 19th century Calcutta was an altogether different place from the city that we know today. Hackney carriages, men on horseback and palanquins together created the rich old world charm of Calcutta. Women went about the city in close palanquins covered by a kind of thick tilt with darwans on both sides carrying brass-bound sticks. During festivals, the darwans of the house would carry the women folk to the holy Ganges for a dip, palanquin and all. Riding in carriages and using an umbrella in sun or rain was considered to be unwomanly. During the first few years of Rabindranath's life, there was no gas in the city, no kerosene lamp and no electricity at all. After sunset, all forms of outdoor activity would cease. It was not at all like the modern times when major forms of recreation and refreshment begins only after sundown in the brilliance of street lamps and festive lights. Rabindranath recalls that when the kerosene lamp was first introduced, the children in the Tagore house were astounded by its brilliant mechanism. It was by this dim light that Rabindranath first began his education from Perry Sarkar's books. Rabindranath confesses that he was not at all a brilliant or a hard-working student. His master rebuked him, saying that he would be the black sheep of the family, with all his cousins and brothers having excellent academic qualifications and achievements. When his master began teaching him, Rabindranath would start rubbing his eyes and yawning till his master gave up trying to teach him. Rabindranath's mother, Sharoda Devi, was not a strict person by nature, and she usually gave in to her sons made-up stories of headache and stomachache and fever. Rabindranath recalls that the mothers of his time considered that it was not a great crime if their sons took a break from studies, unlike the present-day mothers. Rabindranath's reminiscences about the lack of water pipes and masonry channels is equally enlightening. The servants of the house would carry numerous pots containing the clean Ganges water in the months of February and March. This water would then be stored in a room to be used for the rest of the year. Of course, this water had to be used cautiously because the Ganges was usually dirty for the rest of the year. Chocolate was then unknown in the market, and children had to satisfy their desire by a kind of rose lollipop which was sticky because of its sesamum-covered sugar lump. The hawkers during the hot months of April and May would bring ice and salt water, which has now modified its look, flavor, taste and name into the ice cream. The hawkers would also bring baskets full of fresh spring flowers, especially the bale flower. The women would skillfully string these flowers into their hair knots bound by a black hair braid into different styles. They would wear black bordered Chandannagar saris, pleated and twisted after the fashion of those days. The barber's wife would scrub their feet with pumice and paint them with red lac. There was no scope for visiting cinema halls and restaurants in those days. Men returning from work would congregate in the courtyard of the Tagore house to engage in theatre and drama. Rich gentlemen would arrive into the outer reception room of the Tagore house in big coaches. The elders of the house would sprinkle them with rose water and give each of them a bunch of flowers. The entertainments would carry on late into the night, with the spectators throwing in bags of money during those instances when applause was most required. But the children were not allowed to be anywhere near the performances, no matter how much they begged or pleaded with the adults. Rabindranath remembers that on one such occasion, he was allowed to see the play of Nolo and Damayanti, but unfortunately he fell asleep in the middle of the drama, and to add to his great insult, he was carried off and put to bed in front of all the guests. The major part of the day for women was occupied in preparing betel leaves for the guests who arrived in the outer reception room of the Tagore house. They would place the lime on the betel leaf, smeared catechu on it with a small stick, and after putting in the right amount of spices, folded it and secured it with a clove. There was a big earthenware tub containing large balls of charcoal covered with ash. The hookahs would hang down like snakes. Unlike the modern day people who like to remain confined within four walls for the sake of privacy, the people in Rabindranath's time would come and go into whichever houses they liked. The hawkers, the snake charmers and the jugglers would go into the Tagore house whenever they liked and entertain the household without being shunned in the slightest. There were betel leaves and tobacco ready for the guests throughout the day. Rabindranath was altogether a very creative and imaginative person, and this skill of his manifested itself at a very early age when he was under servocracy, his word for the reign of servants. There was a large palanquin in the far corner of his house, which was big enough to have needed 8 bearers for each pole. This palanquin belonged to the time of Rabindranath's grandmother and had colored line drawings on its cloth. Rabindranath says, "I was not yet therefore of an age to put my hand to any serious work in the world, and the old palanquin on its part had been dismissed from all useful service. Perhaps it was this fellow feeling that so much attracted me towards it. It was to me an island in the midst of the ocean, and I on my holidays became Robinson Crusoe. There I sat within its closed doors, completely lost to view, delightfully safe from prying eyes." There was a considerable change in the traditional customs of the house when Rabindranath's elder brother Jorasanko Tagore and his wife Kadambari Devi took over the charges of the household. There was no parda system observed in Kadambari Devi's apartments. Further, the style of wearing the sari as we see today was first introduced by her. It was Jorasanko Tagore who laid the foundation of Rabindranath's genius as a musician, poet and writer. He also encouraged Rabindranath to ask questions, explore the unknown and to start thinking for himself. The principles which Rabindranath used as a solid foundation for the Shantiniketan school's method of imparting education. Also, he equated these principles with modern day children who must never fail to question, challenge and reason without blindly obeying their elders. In the book My Boyhood Days, Rabindranath Tagore brings out the very heart of old Calcutta with his experiences and feelings as a child. Without any trace of self-pity, he depicts his life under the stifling command and control of his elders. Most importantly, this book serves as a means to understand the difference in life between the late 19th century and the 21st century. This book also helps us to understand the changes that occurred in the Bengali upper middle class households, but what remains to be said at the end is that My Boyhood Days documents the acute sensibility of a child who went on to become one of the creative giants of India. I sincerely hope that you have liked this analysis of the book My Boyhood Days by Rabindranath Tagore. If you have, please do not forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. I have provided the links of my previous videos in the description below so that you may watch them. I'll be back again with an analysis of yet another book. Till then, happy reading.